Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because, well, we are embarking on a massive investigation. In this explainer, we're tackling the ultimate mystery, the literal origins of humanity and the dawn of civilization. We're talking about who our earliest ancestors actually were, how they managed to survive in a completely wild, unpredictable world, and exactly how they paved the way for us to be sitting here today. So get comfortable, lock in, and let's unravel the mystery of us.
Okay, let's just dive right in. And honestly, prepare to have your mind completely blown. When you think of history, the pyramids, the Roman Empire, knights in shining armor, all the way up to that smartphone in your pocket, all of that written, recorded history makes up less than 1% of the time humans have actually been on Earth. Literally less than 1%. That means more than 99% of our entire human story happened before anyone could even write a single word down. We're talking about a massive, unwritten epoch stretching from around 3 million years ago right up to just 5,000 years ago. So that naturally brings up a pretty massive puzzle. How on earth do we know what happened in the dark? If there are no ancient journals, no stone tablets, no written records for 3 million years of our existence, how can we possibly understand our early ancestors? Well, I want you to put on your detective hats for a second. When there are no witnesses around to tell you the story, what do? You look for clues left behind at the scene. And for early human history, the scene is the Earth itself.
To solve this mystery, we've got to look at the clues literally buried in the dirt. And one of the absolutely most vital clues? The fossil. Now, a fossil isn't just some old bone. It's the preserved remains, traces, or even impressions of plants, animals, or humans from the distant past that have been buried under layers of earth and slowly turned to stone over thousands or even millions of years. They are basically nature's time capsules. When biological material turns to stone, it locks in a physical record of the past, letting us see the actual shape and structure of our ancient relatives. It's wild.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the incredibly intense, meticulous work required to actually find these clues. Archaeologists are essentially the ultimate crime scene investigators. At excavation sites, they very carefully scrape away layers of soil to uncover not just fossils, but tools, artifacts, and discarded objects left behind by early humans. By piecing together all these tiny fragments, they can actually reconstruct a really vivid picture of ancient daily life. They'll even experiment by making similar tools themselves just to understand exactly how these early humans survived.
And as we analyze all these amazing archaeological findings, we start to see that our history actually runs on two parallel tracks: biological evolution and cultural evolution. So biological evolution refers to the physical and genetic changes over millions of years. You know how our ancestors physically evolved from Australopithecines into upright walking Homo erectus and eventually into us, Homo sapiens. But that second track, cultural evolution, is just as crucial. This is how humans adapted to their changing climate and environment, not by changing their bodies, but by changing their behavior. We're talking inventing tools, developing technology, and finding entirely new ways to harness natural resources.
Let's step back for a second and see how all of this builds across a massive timeline. The Paleolithic era, or the Old Stone Age, represents these vast stretches of time with incredibly slow but monumental milestones. Around 3.3 million years ago, we see the very first stone tools being created. Then, around 2 million years ago, we hit a huge milestone. Homo erectus, armed with hand axes and cleavers, becomes the first early human ancestor to migrate out of Africa, spreading into Asia and Europe. And then, we fast forward all the way to just 5,000 years ago, when the invention of writing officially kicks off recorded history.
But let's rewind a bit to those very first tools, because they are basically a defining characteristic of our species. Experts sometimes brilliantly describe these early stone tools as extracorporeal limbs. Really think about that phrase for a second. Because early hominins didn't have the claws of a lion or the raw strength of a bear, they had to use their cognitive ability to create extensions of their own bodies. A sharpened rock allowed them to cut, scrape, and hunt in ways their bare hands simply couldn't. This specific cognitive leap, making a tool to solve a problem, that marks the true dawn of unique human behavior.
And this tool-making didn't just stay stagnant. It evolved right alongside our brains. Over thousands of years, as human intelligence expanded, those heavy, simple hand axes gave way to highly specialized tools. We see a really clear progression toward more refined instruments, blade-like shapes, microliths, and tools crafted from bone. This technological progress meant early humans could hunt way more efficiently, craft better clothing, and ultimately survive in a much wider variety of environments. It was a total game changer.
But hey, surviving is one thing, thriving is something else entirely. As we move from the Paleolithic into the Neolithic period, the New Stone Age, something massive happens. the adoption of agriculture. But I want to pause here and ask you guys this. Why do historians universally call the shift to farming a revolution rather than just, a simple change in diet? Think about the gravity of that word, revolution. It implies a total, irreversible overturning of the status quo. Moving from wandering hunter-gatherers to settled farmers didn't just change what was for dinner. It permanently altered the entire biological and social trajectory of our species forever.
The answer to that really comes down to one absolutely revolutionary development: surplus food. Think about it. When you have extra food, you don't have to constantly move around to follow animal herds. You can actually stay in one place. This surplus laid the foundation for the very first permanent villages. Settling down meant people could finally invest time in new skills, like making pottery to actually store that surplus food, domesticating animals, and weaving. Honestly, it was the exact spark that ignited the foundation of complex civilizations.
And once that spark caught fire, human progress just exploded into the Bronze Age. We start seeing major civilizations emerging independently in fertile river valleys all over the world, bringing massive breakthroughs. Take the Sumerians in southern Mesopotamia, for example. They began engineering their environment on a staggering scale. They built complex systems of dams and irrigation canals to literally turbocharge their agriculture. They used mud and burnt bricks to build these huge defensive walls, and they constructed massive stepped pyramid temples called ziggurats. And these weren't just religious sites. The walls had a single entrance because the ziggurat actually doubled as the city's heavily guarded treasury. How cool is that?
So, the crucial point here is that human societies were becoming incredibly organized. These sprawling ruins of early city-based structures, they are the physical evidence of that organization. People were no longer just trying to survive the winter, they were managing massive economies. They were building social hierarchies, creating incredibly complex administrative systems, and organizing thousands of individuals to work together for mutual prosperity and defense. The sheer scale of cooperation required to build and maintain these cities is just staggering to think about.
This era was also totally defined by another massive technological leap: metallurgy. During the Chalcolithic or Copper Age, and pushing right into the Bronze Age, humans actually learned how to extract and shape metal. By mixing copper and tin, they created bronze, a material far harder and more durable than literally anything before it. This mastery allowed humans to craft vastly superior tools, devastating weapons, and really intricate art. And naturally, this accelerated trade between distant cities, leading to massive town expansion and incredible wealth generation.
But here's the catch. With growing wealth, booming populations, and these ever-expanding trade networks, early civilizations ran into a pretty major problem. Human memory is totally flawed. You simply cannot run a complex, sprawling, city-based economy on verbal promises and memorized trade agreements. Society had just become way too complex for that. They needed a reliable way to record economic transactions, track agricultural surpluses, and manage social activities. Basically, they needed the ultimate leap in human cultural evolution.
They needed writing. If we look at the seal on the left from the Harappan civilization, it features this beautiful pictographic script. It's incredibly intricate, yet to this very day, it remains completely undeciphered. Just this tantalizing mystery of the ancient world. But then on the right, we have a later script called Brahmi, used in India, which has been successfully deciphered. Whether it's the cuneiform of the Sumerians, the hieroglyphics of Egypt, or the Brahmi script, the development of writing systems marks a truly monumental threshold. It is the exact moment we finally cross over from that 99% of unwritten prehistory into the final 1% of recorded history.
We've literally traveled from the earliest Australopithecines chipping away at rocks to create extracorporeal limbs, all the way to massive Bronze Age cities engineering rivers and writing down their own laws. It is such a stunning journey of adaptation and ingenuity. So I want to leave you with a provocative thought to ponder. Looking back at absolutely everything we covered in this explainer today, if you had to choose just one major innovation from early civilizations that changed the world permanently, what would it be? Was it the stone tool? Was it agriculture, metallurgy, or maybe the written word? I really want to hear your thoughts on this, so definitely drop your answer and your reasoning in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into early human history. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.